Today we're going to learn how to make a poncho for a 18-inch doll using a snap closure like this. Now the packet instructions are available on the link here in the video if you haven't already purchased them. On the last few pages of the packet you're going to have templates. These are my mock ones. You will have white printed copy ones that look very similar to this. We have a pie-shaped one for the main body of the poncho, a circle for the neck opening, and this little rectangle shape here is going to be for the gusset for the hood. So you'll print those off and cut them along the black lines. And I already have my fabric pre-cut for the starting here. You'll have two pieces. I have a template for this if you want. I just use my rotary cutter to cut it 6.5 inches by 13. One for the lining and one for the exterior print. And then I have my two for the doll size here at 17-inch squares. So the first thing we're going to do is get started with the hood pieces. Take your exterior print and have it on your workspace facing right side facing up, and you're going to go ahead and fold it in half so it looks more like a square shape than a long rectangle. And you're going to match the corners here together, and what you're going to do is just pin together this top edge here. So you have the fold on this edge, raw edges, raw edges, raw edges. We're just going to pin this top line here, and then I want you to sew just this top section here by using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you will repeat the same for the lining of the poncho, folding that in half, pinning, and then sewing with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. Once you have that sewn, we will meet back here and I'll tell you the next step. So once you have that top edge sewn, what you're going to do is you're going to take your gusset template, which is a little rectangle here, and it'll show you which end goes towards the fold of the fabric. So you're going to find the corner that has the fold on one edge and then the sewn seam on the other, and you're going to put your template appropriately against there so that the side that says fold this way is indeed that side that has the fold on it. Then go ahead and take a fabric marking pen, and you're going to just mark along the two edges here of the fabric, and then you're going to cut that piece out. You can use the scissors, or I'm just using a rotary cutter here, and then remove that piece. And what you're going to do next then is just you're going to open this up so it kind of looks more like a triangle shape, and so that the seam here is kind of in the center of that triangle, and then this top edge here should line up just kind of perfectly like that. So what you're going to do is take a pin just to make sure that's in alignment, and then you'll take this to the sewing machine and you'll sew that closed using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, and you'll repeat the same steps with your lining fabric as well. So once you have those gussets sewn closed, you'll see that it kind of takes on the form of that hood. The seam here is going to be on the back of the head, and then this part here is going to be what frames the face. For right now, we're going to just set these two pieces aside, and we will start with our main body of the fabric. And I'm just going to show you on one of them what you're going to do. So you'll take your 17-inch square, if you're doing the doll sized one here, and you're going to fold it in half, and then kind of just create, if you're having cotton, something that's able to be ironed, I would go ahead and press these seams. It's going to make a later step a little bit easier, but the minky is not able to be ironed. But if you do have a more of a cotton print, that would be what I'd recommend doing. You see my square isn't perfect here, but that's okay. We're going to be cutting this into a circle, so it doesn't have to be exactly precise. You just don't want it to be any smaller than 17 inches because that's where we're going to be having the circle be cut from. So you fold it in half and then in half again. So I have my folded corner here, and then I have all 4 raw edge corners stacked on this edge over here opposite of this fold. So what you do next then, if you wanted to iron it right now, you could iron the seam and the seam just to put creases in that fabric. But you're going to take your pie-shaped template, and there's a black corner on one of the edges here, the center of the pie. That's going to point towards your folded corner here, and you're just going to line this edge up here on the side and then the one here on the bottom, and then you'll take your fabric marking pen and you will just trace this curve along here, Once you have it traced, you can take your scissors or your rotary cutter and you're going to cut through all 4 layers here to complete that circle. So go ahead and do that now. And then you can remove this part here and throw that away. Before I unfold this, I'm going to just take a pin and I'm going to place it here in the center corner here, just so I have my center of the fabric marked. And I'm going to repeat those same steps with my lining. Key is a little bit harder for me. I don't have my normal fabric marking pen, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to hold the template and I'm going to cut with my rotary cutter right like this. The Minky is a little bit more bulky, so it's a little bit harder to work with, so it just takes a little bit more patience. I will mark my center of the circle here, and then now you can see when I unfold this, I have a nice circle for both of these pieces here. So your next step then is I want you to place these circles right sides facing each other and line up the edges as best as you can. And your center pins should be in alignment with one another, which mine are. Just get that centered as best as I can here. Okay, then you will take your neck opening template, which is a circle, and I folded mine into a pie shape just so I could see the center of that is here. I'm going to line up my center of my circle with the center of that pin. And then, again, this is both layers here, they're stacked together. I'm going to trace around here. All right, once I have that trace, I don't know if you can see that super well, but I have my circle marked there. I'm going to cut that circle out. Again, this is going through both of those layers. With circles, they're very touchy. If you go a little bit bigger, it's gonna make a big difference in the whole circumference when we go ahead to attach that hood. So make sure that you're cutting right on that line, not a little less, not a little more. Be quite precise with this step here. All right, so once you have that cut out here, if you went ahead and you made those folded creases with your iron and the lining fabric, this is what's going to be helpful for that. I didn't on this one just because I wanted you to be able to show you what to do if you have a fabric that isn't ironable. What I'm going to do is I'm going to center this here. Mine is 17 inches, so I'll go here, and I'm going to find the center line, which would be 8.5 inches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8.5 right here. And I'm going to just line up my ruler at that spot. And what we're going to do is we're going to just cut one section right here across the center so that it's a straight line up and down. If you have a folded crease in your fabric, you're just going to cut along that crease. But just go like this so that you have that front opening there. Okay. Now, before we move on to the next step, while you have this kind of lined up, take a pin and mark directly across from that to get the exact dead center back part of where the hood is going to be attached to. It's going to make a later step a little bit easier. So I have my pin marking the back of the poncho directly across from this slit right here. Now, we're going to attach the hood. I'll show you on one of them, but you're going to do this step for both the interior and the lining. Take your body right side facing up, and then take your hood. We're going to pin this together so that the right side of the hood is facing the right side of the body. Remember I mentioned that the seam of the hood is the back of the poncho. You're going to line up that seam with that pin that marks the back of the poncho, and you're going to pin it together. Then one side at a time, you're going to pin this raw edge against this curved raw edge, and you should end up with a little bit of a space here at the front. So go ahead and pin around this side and then come back and pin this side around. I'll show you here what it looks like at the end. I'll speed up the camera. All right, so you can see that first edge, I have a little bit of a space here that's still open. That's what it's intended to be. I am going to make a little spot here. You don't have to do this on yours, I just want to show you. We're going to start and stop this seam 1/4 inch from the edge of this hood. Just want to make a mark so you can see it. So if you can see this little spot I made right here, that's where the seam is going to start or stop, so that this is left like a little flap right here, okay? And then we're gonna do the same on the other side here. I'll pin that next. So once you have that pinned around, you'll notice that both of these edges here are similar in terms of how much space is left. And the right side of the hood is facing the right side of the poncho. And I have that, the base of the neck there all pinned together. Now you're gonna go ahead and start sewing 1/4 of an inch from this corner. And you're gonna sew this whole line here, and you're gonna stop when you hit to that next 1/4 of an inch from the edge. We'll go ahead and do that now, and then after that, repeat the same steps for the lining part of the poncho. Once we have our hoods sewn onto the main body of the poncho, we're going to put these together right sides facing. I have my lining right side facing up, my exterior right side facing down, and what I like to do is I put my 2 fingers in the corners over those gussets of the hood, and then I kind of match up the gussets just to get it kind of started with being in alignment. And I found the best way to do this next step is to first line up our corners. So this corner here lined up with the corner down here in the lining. I just put a pin in there, and then I'm gonna follow up here, and I'm gonna do the same thing on the corner of this upper corner here by the neck. And I put my pin on there. Same on this side over here. Okay, once I have those, then I kind of lay this out a little bit more evenly and get the main body to be a little bit more in alignment. Kind of just fold up that hood for now. And then now I'm gonna work around and pin the circular perimeter of the poncho. I have found that it's easier to, once it's laid kind of flat and in mostly alignment here, I'm gonna stick a pin up here and then one on each side just to kind of keep the fabric in place. So that way when I'm working my way around with pinning, it's not shifting and I end up being it real wonky over on this side here. So go ahead and start, just kind of pin the corners. I know it's a circle, it doesn't have corners, but kind of around the top, left and right sides. And then you can pin around the perimeter and then pin around the nape of the hood here as well. That's not the nape, the brim of the hood, sorry. So I'll do that in fast speed here so you don't have to watch me all day long. So once you've pinned the entire perimeter of the circle, next we're going to pin together the rim of the hat here. And I just kind of manipulate the fabric and I start at those corners. And my first pin is gonna go where we had that little black dot to mark that 1/4 inch part from the corner. And then center it as best as you can and pin around the brim so that it lays nice and even. I kind of stretch it out and find that center part, and then I put a pin there and then a pin midway on each of those sides like this. All right, so now I have the entire perimeter pinned, starting here all the way around, up each of these sides, the brim of the hood, and back down again. We're going to sew next using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. You will start right here, go down, pivot, go all the way around, come here, pivot, come up this side here, and then when you get to this corner here, you're going to pivot and you're going to come over here and you're going to sew to kind of just below where that hood attaches. You're going to stop, and then you're going to actually move your fabric and you're going to start a new seam through the entire rim of the hood here. Stop your seam, take the fabric off, you're going to pivot here, and you're going to then repeat here, and you're going to come down here, take this corner. Then I want you to stop about 4 finger width from where your seam started so that we have an opening to turn this right side through there. So we'll go ahead and do that now. So now that I have that sewn around, I have my opening here. I'm just going to go and reach my hand and circle it all the way around, and I want to reach this far corner here. And if you wanted to snip the corners here to make more of a crisp corner, now would be the time to do it. I'm going to just pull that through and then use this to push the rest of the way. Pardon my dog barking upstairs, I'm not sure what's going on up there. Go ahead and pull that all the way through and just kind of manipulate the fabric so that it's mostly straight. We'll finish that up here shortly, but that is, now it's starting to take that form. The last step then that we're going to do for the sewing portion is we're going to top stitch that same seam that we just did all the way around. And go ahead and point your corners. If you want to reach in and do it, you can, or sometimes I'll just take a pin like this and I'll just kind of help that corner out so that I get that nice, crisp, clean look like that. I'm going to do the same here for this one. All right, and then we got those two corners, and then we got to do the edges here on the corners here of where that poncho makes that corner. You can see since we pivoted that fabric when we sewed it that it makes a nice clean corner right there. And we're going to do the same on the other edge here. Okay, so once you have that turned right side out, your raw edges here, what you're going to do is you're going to turn them in by about 1/4 of an inch, match the folded edges together, and then pin them so that the edges stay in alignment with one another. And what I choose to do is I top stitch that whole edge just to keep it like a nice crisp looking project. So to do that, I just kind of manipulate the fabric all the way around. It's a little tedious, but you're going to pin so that the seam that we just sewn is flush against the edge all the way around the project. I will definitely speed up the camera so that you don't have to watch this all day long. Okay, so once you have that pinned all the way around, you're going to sew now using a top stitch. Sometimes I do 1/4 of an inch, but sometimes I like the looks of maybe even like 1/2 of an inch from the edge all the way around the perimeter. The only spot you definitely want to do 1/4 of an inch seam allowance for the top stitch here is where that opening is, because you want to make sure you catch and secure those raw edges so they don't pop outwards. And so you can do that next. So I top stitched the entire perimeter. I ended up doing about 1/2 of an inch from the bottom circular edge, and then around the sides here in the hood I did about 1/4 of an inch, and you can see how I pivoted along the neck and hood area there, so it kind of just matches that opening there. The last and final step then is going to be to attach our snaps here. I like to go as close to the edge as possible here. It just gives a little bit more room to put the hood on and off once it's in use, and maybe even just come down here a little bit nearest this top stitch here. You could just do 1 button up here if you want to do 3, or it's personal preference, however many snaps you want to add there or buttons. Now's the time to do that. And truly, this is reversible because there are no raw edges anywhere. You could certainly have this be a reversible little cape here for the doll. And your snaps, it doesn't matter if they're right or wrong side because it's kind of matching on either end. And if you choose to do buttons, you'll just want to add a button to both sides of it so that you can button it as needed if you're choosing to do a reversible style like this. In case you're wanting to see me put the snaps on, I figured I might as well show you. So I found these cute little heart-shaped snaps off of Amazon, and I'm going to just have this. It's gonna be so cute. One of the hearts is going to be on this side, and then on this side will be the receiver part of it. And so I'm going to, it looks like this side is a little bit more space there, so I'm going to just go right here and make my hole for that snap. And my heart piece is going to be here because this is going to be the top, and then add that there. Use my snap tool. I have seen before you can get snaps that require no tools. I think the tools are pretty slick and handy to have, especially if you're going to be making more than one of these things. So there I have my heart snap there, and then the receiver. These came with the back was just a plain circle, but I want this to be reversible, so I'm going to do the heart then on the back side of here, and then the receiver will be on the top side so that it'll be a functioning snap, and then it can also then be reversible. So I'm just going to make sure I have the correct piece. I do. Okay, so that's going to go right here, having my heart be on the opposite side as I did on the other section here. It's like I lost my opening. Let me try that again. Okay. All right, so I'm gonna make sure my heart is facing the right direction, and then I take my other part of the snap. All right, so there I have my snap. If I wanted to add 3, I could. I'm just gonna do 1 for this one. And then if I wanted to make it reversible, look how cute that is with a little pink snap on there. I love it. There you are. I hope you loved it. Show me what you came up with.